it has a lot to do with what we're talking about, you're out there, you're doing it. You may be making mistakes. You may not know exactly what you're doing, but you're actually out there doing it. And it's President Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out how the strong man stumbled, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. This episode is brought to you by Waypoint TV. Waypoint TV has so much going on right now. They have over 70 producers that put their content on Waypoint TV, and you can watch it all for free on pretty much any device that you have or have a desire to get. You can go to waypointtv.com. You can find out how you can download it on all of those different devices. And they have something brand new going on. They have new written content on their website. They have a learning center, podcasts, blogs, more, all kinds of stuff over there. So check out waypointtv.com. If you're a fisherman or a hunter or just enjoy doing things outside, I think you're really going to like it. And did I mention that it was completely free? So check out waypointtv.com. I think you're going to be happy you did. Other things that we've got going on down this area, we have some new books that we have been reading in the book club. If you don't know what the book club is, you can go to tomrowlandpodcast.com. At the top, there is a tab that says book club, and that's where I list all the different books that me and my friends read. The latest one was Grit by Angela Duckworth. I really liked that book. I thought it was interesting and kind of on the same level as another favorite of mine, which was Mindset. And both of those books are there. If you like reading books like that, as well as many other types of books, you can check it out and see what we're reading. If it's something's of interest to you, you can get it there or anywhere you get books. I also want to thank you for the emails that you've been sending. A lot of great emails and some good constructive criticism, which I'll try to take into account and make the show a little bit better. Also, if you have guests that you like to suggest, many of the guests that we've had so far on this podcast have been suggested by you guys, so I want to thank you for that. Helps to find the interesting people out there and people that are doing really cool things. If you have guest suggestions, send them to podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. I also want to thank one particular listener for the review that he left on iTunes, and it's quite long, which is great. And I really appreciate his time. M.T. Newsom is this guy's name. And I'm not going to read the entire part of, or the entire review, but he mentions that the podcast is purported to be about fishing for the most part, which is true, but it's about lots of other things. And he has picked up on that. And he left really a nice review and very rewarding to have this kind of impact on someone. And I hope that it is not being lost on everyone else. But he says this: Tom and his guests remind me of hiking around Jenny Lake with a girl who would become my wife, of the smiles of my firstborn at catching her first bluefish in North Carolina surf, or late-night boat rides with friends in the Pamlico River, of airplane landings on faraway tarmacs. The production value is high, and Tom and his guests are honest, open, and share lifetimes of interesting experiences. Man, that's super nice. And if our conversations that we're having on this podcast are that meaningful to you, I really, really appreciate that. And so thank you. If you have a rating and review that you could leave on iTunes, I'd appreciate that too. Okay, so I think that is pretty much the housekeeping items that we have for today. And today's podcast is going to be a very, very special one because I have two of my very favorite people in the world. And those people are my son, Turner Rowland, who lives out in Bozeman, Montana, and he is just now finishing up his first season as an elk guide. In his first season, he also happened to be my first elk guide and take me on my very first elk hunting trip. It was great. It was absolutely great. We went out there. It was late season, and it was cold and snowing, and we walked about 12 miles, mostly straight up hills or straight down hills, and got to see some of the most amazing country. But more importantly than that, I got to witness what it looks like for your son to be just super happy, just absolutely on top of the world. And for a parent, it's really all you could ask for, all I can ask for anyway. He had a dream of becoming an elk guide, and he made it happen, turned it into a reality. And I got to go out there and spend some time hunting with him and just watching how he operates. It was a great day. It was an absolutely fantastic day. Super thankful for that time that I was able to spend with him. We're joined also by Turner's roommate and good friend, Brendan Smith. And these guys went to high school together and chose to do something a little bit different than most of their classmates. They chose to go to Montana State University and kind of buck the trend a little bit, go out to Montana, and both of these guys are just super happy. I mean, they are doing exactly what they want to do. Brendan is a really avid fisherman, and Turner is really into the hunting. And Bozeman, Montana is just an incredible place to be if you like to do things outside, whether that's hunting or fishing or rafting or hiking or camping or whatever that is. That place is paradise. And this was a great check-in to see how this decision has been going for them and how this, the first couple of years in Montana have been. And it's also a great time to learn about some really exciting plans that each of them have. Brendan is getting ready to head out on another really big adventure, and I enjoyed hearing from him about that. So stand by for a great conversation with my son, Turner Rowland, and his friend, Brendan Smith. All right, I'm sitting here, Bozeman, Montana, coming to you from Bozeman, Montana. I've got two of my favorite people in the world sitting down here with me. One, Brendan Smith. Two, my son, Turner Rowland. And I came out here for my first elk hunt, guided by my son. And he lives with Brendan. And Brendan and Turner were good buddies in high school, and then continued that friendship out into college at Montana State, and currently roommates, living together, experiencing Montana as it should be, right?
Something like that.
Well, Turner, you're coming off a pretty exciting few months, right?
Yeah. I just finished up first guidance season for elk up in just up a little north of us in the Galtons.
Yeah, and so tell me about your first season.
That was good, man. We packed into camp all August, so just taking loads. We're guiding in the Lee Metcalf Wilderness area, so no motorized vehicles, just horses, and we're up there packing camp in. Everything has to come in, everything has to come out every preseason and postseason. So we were doing that, get to the 1st of September, which was opening day, and had 2 weeks of interning to learn the terrain, learn how elk act a little differently from where I've been hunting in the past, get to know everybody in camp pretty well, and then it's off to the races on your own for another 4 weeks of 2 weeks of bow hunting and then another 2 weeks of rifle.
So then they just cut you loose? Are you operating out of camp?
Yeah, so we're about 8 miles back and operating out of camp every day. It's a 6-day hunt, so 6 days of the week we're out there going out of camp and hunting elk every day.
Wow. And what was the result?
The result? Well, I was there for three elk on the ground. which I'm super proud of. So my first 2 weeks of interning, first week we got about a 280-inch bull, decent 6x6 on the ground. First week archery, and then second week archery we got a small 6x6 on the ground. Third week was a little slow. Called a really nice 6x6 in, and just couldn't make it happen. There's some branches in the way of the shot. He was at 31 yards, I think. Fourth week archery was pretty unproductive. But first week of rifle, yeah, I guided my first successful client all on my own. That was that was right in there in the Gallatin's first week of rifle. And
Wow.
then second week was a little slower. Bulls got a little wary. We saw all the cows in the world, but I think we saw 4 bulls that week, and they're all, a couple miles away.
Yeah. So now that you've had this first season, what are your big takeaways from your first season of elk hunting?
Patience, persistence. It's strange because I was doing a lot of the right things, like so many right things, and just one little wrong thing, which is mostly either being patient on a bull, being a little quieter on a bull, so not calling as much, or really just knowing elk habits a little more than I have in the past, and learning from all the guys in camp. I mean, everybody in camp has a tremendous amount of experience. There's one fellow there who's been guiding for 30 years. I mean, he started hunting there when he was 16, knows every little trail, every elk that's in there, and he helped a lot with me, and just helping me learn, answering all my questions, and was pretty instrumental to the success I had. So
yeah. So how did that work out? What was the dynamic like for a young kid, a new person coming in and having this older, experienced hunter pay any attention to you at all? How did that work out, really?
Well, at first it didn't. No, I kind of just started doing favors for him. He's a super nice guy, but you got to earn his respect, definitely. So while I was packing in, I started riding his horses for him. He had first day packing, I rode the owner's horse. He lent me his horse, and then after that, I started riding this green Mustang that came out of the Pryor Mountains, named Kane. And he's kind of been sitting on pasture all summer and was pretty green. No one wanted to ride him. And so I just started riding him and working with him a little bit. And he was like, oh, man, well, this guy, kind of knows how to ride. He's nice, I guess. And so then we started getting into camp. And, while I was there interning, I got 2 bulls on the ground. And I guess he was like, maybe this guy wants to learn, or maybe this guy might stick around for a while. And then first week of rifle, killed an elk, and I guess he just realized that I had something to offer camp, and kind of helped me become a lot better elk hunter this season. I mean, the learning curve, I thought the learning curve was super steep on elk hunting. My first few years out here, I learned a lot, but once you start guiding and start being out there every day, you are so in tune with even the little things such as the weather. What the elk are doing. Okay, well, this elk was out here yesterday. Okay, well, this wind's usually coming down off the ridge in the morning. It's going up in the afternoon. So instead of coming up like I know that the wind's going to be coming down. So we need to circle above them and then come down, or vice versa. If the wind's coming up a drainage, you can be like, okay, well, I need to go further up this drainage to come down, because these elk like to feed down in the meadow at night, and then they come up the ridge in the morning. So we're going to start down in the drainage and work our way up at shooting light. Just little things like that, you're just so in tune with, and it's so fascinating to live with the elk. I mean, you're living with elk. Like we would hear elk bugle all night long while we're sitting in camp. I mean, I've heard stories of elk waking people up in the morning. That didn't happen this year, but they're everywhere, man. I mean, we go right behind camp and there'd be elk. Like it's pretty cool, and it's a pretty cool place, and there are a lot of elk there, and just observing them and living with them and waking up every morning and hearing bugles, and you kind of start to recognize like different bulbs bugles and be like, okay, well, like I think I heard that one yesterday, and this is what he did. And So you're going over there and playing the wind and the thermals and, waiting for them to switch, because a lot of times there'll be a bad wind. And so you're like, okay, well, the elk are right there, but we can't get them right now because there's a barrier or there's a cliff or something, or maybe it's just thick in there and they're going to bust us. So let's wait for the thermals to switch, and then they're going to come right to us. And that's what happened. It's kind of what happened first week of rifle. But yeah, I mean, just being in tune with your environment and your surroundings, and living with the elk, and then living with the bears and the wolves, and there's just so many factors and so many things going into it. And then you start to overcomplicate it, and then you start to oversimplify it, and then there's just so many things going on. And Ed was the fellow's name, has been guiding there 30 years, and he'd answer all my questions and make, I'd come into camp and just seeing him hunt a little bit and seeing the way he talked about the area, I was like, man, this guy knows what he's doing. So even just simple questions that some people would roll their eyes out, like, man, when do you cow call? Like, you're super successful. I know when I cow call, but when do you cow call? You've killed, 30 elk.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe I'm doing something a little wrong or not right. It seems simple, when do you cow call? It seems like an obvious question, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes these answers are a little hidden, or maybe there's one situation where you can ask him a super simple question and he can give you a super simple answer. But when you're in that situation, you're like, oh man, well, this is what I've done, and the elk didn't come in. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll try this. And then sure as shit, here comes the elk. You're like, man, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty mature of you to realize that you can't just go stomping into a new place and have the older, more experienced people, expect that they're going to help you out. I think that that's pretty wise, really, to think, okay, well, I'm going to need to be doing whatever kind of work I can. I'm going to take all the dirty work, all the dirty jobs, and really start to develop a little bit of respect, and then just keep your eyes open and your mouth shut for the most part. And that's the way it worked in fishing, and it's interesting that it worked in elk hunting. But you guys are both doing things that are a little bit off, a little different than a lot of the people that you graduated from high school with, and just kind of interested in how that worked for both of you. How, let's back it up a little bit to, first of all, I want to go into how you made this elk hunting guide operation happen, because this has been a dream of yours for a long time. And even though I'm in the outdoor space and I know a lot of people, I don't really know anybody in the elk hunting world necessarily. And so I didn't help you get this job. So how did that happen that you find this opportunity, or you create this opportunity for yourself? Or if somebody else was thinking about doing something like that, what does it look like?
Well, I guess those are two kind of separate questions. I'm gonna tackle the first one, how I got into it. It really started from an extremely early age. 12. I think I killed my first deer with granddad. Just a little 4-point buck, Michigan 4-point. So a 2-point in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
Had it has 4 points. From there, I just kind of started to kind of look around, and I was like, man, that's the coolest thing I've ever done. I say coolest thing I've ever done. There are a lot of coolest things I've ever done. When I was growing up, you'd pick me up from school and go catch tarpons. Like that's one of the coolest things I've ever done. But I kind of started to explore, and then we got into turkey hunting, and I killed my first turkey with you, and then I killed 2 more, and with you.
Turner does all the killing
in that same year, and I think I saw my first elk hunting video that next year, and just immediately I was like, man, that looks something I'd like to do. And I saw another elk hunting video, and I was like, where is this? And then I was looking at where it was, and it's in the mountains, and I was like, man, I'm going to do that. I kind of set my mind to it. And I remember probably from when I was 13, I was like, Dad, let's go elk hunting. Let's go elk hunting. Let's go elk hunting. You're like, well, when you can carry a 50-pound pack for 8 miles, well, then we'll go elk hunting. I was like, okay, well, I don't know. I don't know about that. Then I started looking more into it. And just every year, I think I wished for Christmas an elk hunt. And it just kind of wasn't feasible. We didn't know anything about it. It was 2,000 miles away, was probably the nearest elk. Now, I mean, there are elk in the Smoky Mountains and everything. Even though they're extremely hard to draw, you can still go look at them.
Mm-hmm.
But just kind of this, I was just really interested with elk. Almost to a...
So you have the interest, but how does that turn into actually having the opportunity to do it professionally?
Oh, yeah. So after gaining some experience elk hunting, getting some good experience elk hunting, for whatever reason, I took a semester and went back home to get these contacts that now allow me to see, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted some time at home at a really very stable, I guess would be the right word, environment where not a lot's going on. You can kind of get used to these contacts because it's basically a hard piece of plastic you're putting in your eye. Like, it's not an activity that I would describe as fun. So I just wanted a really relaxed atmosphere. And I was going to school back in Chattanooga. Just kind of took a step back and didn't really like what I was doing. Like, not all I could think about was, elk in the mountains and everything I watched was elk hunting. And I just kind of started thinking about it, and I was like, man, well, I don't even know if I'm going to get to go elk hunting this fall. Like, I might be back in Chattanooga. And, like, the deepest sense of, like, disappointment overcame me to the point where I was like, man, I'm just going to guide. Like, I'm going to go out there and this is what I'm going to do. Like, I just can't think about anything else. I can't function without doing this. So I'm going to go and I'm going to guide. And I came up to you and I was like, Dad, I think I'm going to do this. And you're like, okay, well, how are you going to do it? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know where to start. How did you start? And you're like, well, I started with this guide school. And so I started looking into guide schools. I was like, I don't know if that's what I want to do. There wasn't really I couldn't find any good information on, and like, to find a reputable guide school. I found a couple that I was a little interested in, but it didn't really appeal to me that much. And so I came back to you again and I was like, man, I don't know about this guide school. Like, you think there's any way that I can just do it? You're like, well, I got this advice, one time that said to write a letter a week. I can't remember the exact story, but I started getting in contact, as technology advanced, I wanted to take advantage of that. So I got into contact with one outfitter, or day, actually, whether that be like phone call, email, or handwritten letter. I just started calling them up, everything from Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Idaho, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, even Alberta. I was calling everybody. No one really gave me the time of day, because who wants to hire a guide that doesn't have any guiding experience? And finally, I called this one fellow up who owns a outfitting business in Alder, Montana, Broken Arrow Ranch, and I was gonna ride horses for them, train their horses in exchange for an opportunity to guide. And that kind of fizzled in and out. Kept on making calls, kept on contacting these companies, these outfitters, and ran into a guy Josh Abbott, who I work for now, who's the owner of the outfitter, and he actually did the same job in Yellowstone that I did.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. He worked as a wrangler in Yellowstone. He actually worked in Canyon Lodge, one of the two locations. Mm-hmm. Now I worked in the other one, Roosevelt Lodge. And so did another guy and like 4 other elk guides that he knows. And so he was like, oh, you worked at Roosevelt? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that. Do you know this person, this person? I was like, yeah, I know them. Okay, well, do you know this person, this person? I know them too. And then just by strange coincidence, one of the guys that graduated from the high school that me and Brendan went to was a guide for Sage Peak Outfitters. And so we kind of got to talking, and I was like, well, I'd really like to guide this fall. And it's like, okay, well, we're actually looking for a guide, but I want to make sure he's a good elk hunter and can, give good customer service and make sure his clients are all taken care of. And so he calls Creighton. He's like, hey man, do you know anything about this guy? He goes, yeah, actually I do. We have a bunch of mutual friends in common. I don't really know anything about his hunting, but let me give another call to a friend who knows him a lot better. And so just through the process of like recommendations and the process of bugging the stew out of them, I got the opportunity to guide elk.
Yeah, that's cool. And what I like about that is that there's persistence, but it certainly didn't happen on the first try. And that advice that was given to me was from Michael Pollock. This is before the internet. And I asked him one time, I was like, what do you do? You know, I was asking him kind of a similar thing, like give me some help here. How do you grow your business? How do you do these, create more business and everything? He said, well, I write a letter a week. And I was like, really, a letter a week? Like who do you write them to? He's like, I don't know. I just make sure that I write a letter a week. Trying to dig in a little deeper. I'm like, who would you possibly write a letter a week to? He's like, reps for tackle companies, my clients, anybody, And so the beauty of that is that a letter a week is not too much. But where the real magic comes is when you decide that you're going to do that, and you come up to a week and you've already written your old clients' letters, and you've already written all the tackle reps that letters, and you've already written the tackle companies that letters, and you literally have no one to write a letter to. And so you're racking your brain of, if I've got to write a letter, so who am I going to write it to? I don't know. And you just keep racking your brain. And maybe this week you write it to the editor of a magazine. And you're like, I really like the articles in your magazines, and I write some articles. Maybe I could submit one day. And you just expect to get nothing back and you get nothing back from 90% of these. But if you just keep doing that, and today, like, you can easily write an email a day. Like, whatever you wanted to do, you could write an email a day very easily. It's so easy to get somebody's contact information on the internet now. You write that letter a day or an email a day, and you'll get something back from 1%, maybe 10%. 10% would be great. But eventually you create this opportunity to make something happen. I think that's super cool. And man, what an incredible opportunity. I mean, we had a really great time. I mean, we're coming out extremely late season now, I guess.
It's pretty late season. I mean, they're done with the rut. They're, bulls are bacheloring up in their and grouping up in their bachelor groups, and cows are.
I didn't really expect anything other than I just wanted to spend some time with you. I wanted to see what you were kind of doing, and I mean, the whole introduction, your entire introduction to this place that's out this window right here, Bozeman, Yellowstone, Jackson area, was basically to come out here and go hiking. And that's what we did. As a family, we would just come out and go hiking. And, you're in this incredibly beautiful area. And, we've hiked to some really cool stuff. And that's kind of what elk hunting, late season elk hunting was like. Like, we went to a place, we got on a trailhead, we started walking on public land. Then we go veer off trail, and you're following, and all these tracks. And then we hiked 11.8 miles. Most of that was straight up or straight down. And I just thought it was super cool, man. I mean, I see how people get really, really into it.
Yeah. So I want to hear like your preconceived notions of what elk hunting would be like, and then what you think of afterwards.
Well, I didn't really have any preconceived notions, because the only thing that I know about elk hunting is that some people get really, really close to them, like elk hunting, archery hunting, I mean, for elk. And so I realized that this is a different season and we're going to be doing different things. But I really, I've been in the outdoors most of my life, and certainly have spent a tremendous amount of time fishing and guiding and managing people's expectations as a professional guide. So I try not to have any expectations. My expectation is that I'm going to be able to spend the day with my son, and we're going to have a great time no matter what happens. I mean, we could have a survival situation, and it's going to be a great day.
Well, you packed for it.
Yeah. Well, you told me it was -5. I'm coming straight from Key West, and I'm deciding that -5, I brought like 300 pounds of clothes. But you told me what to get, and I got the right stuff, and it was great. And if anything, I was too hot, because I mean, it is incredibly physically active, and fitness is paramount in everything that you're doing in this type of hunting. And so obviously I love that. I mean, the harder it is, the more I'm going to like it. And the further we have to go, the more it self-selects who's going to go back there. And so the further you go, the less people you're going to see. And I'm all for that. I love that. And so I really didn't have any expectations. I kind of had a suspicion that we were going to get one. I really did. I really thought we're going to get one. And I was already planning on packing it out. Like,
that's when you get in trouble, man. You're like, all right, well, how am I going to pack it out?
No. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like I'm planning on packing it out. I planned on packing it out with what I took in, what I was wearing, how much water I brought, because I am prepared for 100-pound pack out. That's what I mean, and whether we got one or not, I was prepared for that. Like I didn't have my pack on the way in was light, but I made sure that I had plenty of water because in training for the Go Ruck and all that stuff, I mean, I know what 100-pound pack out for 12 miles is like. It was with sand and not with an elk leg, but you got to drink a lot of water. I mean, you don't just carry 100 pounds on your back and go, 10 miles and not carry a lot of water. So I was prepared for all of these things. I didn't really fully expect that it was going to happen, but it wouldn't have surprised me if it did. But it also wouldn't have surprised me if it didn't.
Based on the amount of tracks we saw, I mean, there are tracks everywhere, man. And I think we were just a couple days too late.
Yeah.
With their migratory patterns.
Well, we saw plenty of deer, and then we saw lots of tracks, and that was what was really cool. I kept thinking all day long, like we're doing this elk hunting, and we're in a public land area, but we're late season, so there is a foot. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say.
Probably 8 inches of snow on the ground.
So 8 inches of snow, and then the day that we're out there, it is snowing hard. When an hour after we start, it starts to snow. Then it starts to snow harder basically every hour that we're out there, which was the entire day. And by the end, we had an accumulation of at least 3 or 4 inches while we were out there.
Yeah, I'd say
so. What I was fascinated with the tracks and how we were looking at the tracks and how we could tell that the tracks weren't today and how you could see deer tracks that definitely were today, really fresh. Mm-hmm. And you could see your boot track and you could see how everything was different. And then you could come back across where we had walked and you notice how your boot track is now filling up with snow. And so then you compare that to the animal tracks and you're like, okay, well, that's at least a day old, and without knowing a lot about it. But I kept having this thought, and I was like, wow, this is incredible, because if we came up here 3 weeks ago when there was no snow, everything looks perfect, and we know that this is a place that elk like to be, and we know that this is a place that a lot of elk have been killed in the past. This is a great area. And we go up there, and we hike around all day long, and there's no snow on the ground. You would be thinking, man, I know they're there, and we're just missing them.
I don't know, man. I've been in a lot of situations where I'm like, man, I don't know if there are any elk here.
Well, right. But when there's snow on the ground and it's covering everywhere, there's no missing it. There's no mistaking it. Like we could look across a half a mile across or even further with the binoculars and you could see the tracks going up the hill.
Yeah, we were talking about that and be like, man, I wonder how many animals pass through there. This mountain range is X amount of years old.
Right. And that was so cool. And I kept having this thought. I was like, how much different would flats fishing be if fish left tracks? Like if you could see, and you can in the Bahamas, like you remember when we went to the Bahamas and I was showing you those little horseshoe shaped things?
Yeah.
Look, this is where bonefish have been feeding through here. Okay, for whatever reason, the bottom structure in the Bahamas allows for that way more than the bottom structure in the Keys. I don't know if it's just harder or what, but you go in the Bahamas and you can clearly see where 100 bonefish have gone through and they leave almost what looks like an elk track on the sand. And you can go through there and you can tell that's very fresh, like they are just 100 yards in front of us somehow, or that's like yesterday or whatever. We don't see that in the Keys like they see it in the Bahamas, but that's a place where you go, this looks like there should be bonefish here. There should be bonefish here. And you pull around and then you look at these tracks that they're leaving where they have been feeding. And you're like, yeah, I knew there were bonefish here. I knew they would be here. And they may not be here exactly when we're here, but this is an area that they like. And I kept looking at all these tracks that we were seeing going, man, this is really cool because you can come up here and you have immediate validation of, okay, I think they're going to be elk here. Sure enough, there were a lot of elk here. We may have missed them by a day, but then you start, over the years, I'm sure you'll start to get better and better at honing in when they're going to be there and when they're not going to be there, and when it's too late, when's not. And, that's going to be the time as you start to get better and better. You just kind of look at an area or whatever, and you just probably eventually, after doing it for 20 years or whatever, you just know, should have been there last week probably. Now we're going to move over to this other drainage, and that's probably where they're going to be.
Well, that's what we did.
Yeah.
We were looking at the elk tracks, and they were heading down. I'm like, man, they're headed down. They're not in the flats out, because we were in a spot, it's a very famous elk hunting spot, very widely known, and you can kind of see down on the flats. And so we were glassing the flats, and there weren't any elk there. So It's like they're obviously still in the mountains.
That's what I like so much better about the Western hunting than the Eastern hunting is the opportunity to get on one of those places where you can see this big vista. And just like what I kind of think was your introduction to this type of hunting was us, in quotes, hunting animals in Yellowstone by just pulling out on the pullouts and everybody getting out with their binoculars and seeing who can see what. Like, that was our game.
Yeah.
That was our game
that we played. We saw some crazy stuff like that, man. We saw that one grizzly bear running downhill chasing that elk calf. We saw a pack of coyotes actually get an elk calf. All these man, we had some crazy about elk calves.
I know.
Remember? And then I'm lucky I ever went elk hunting again, man, because remember that time in I think it was Mammoth Hot Springs where I got attacked by that cow elk?
You didn't really get attacked.
I did get attacked by a cow elk, man. I thought I was going to die that day.
I told you not to go out that
I didn't
the back
know an
door.
elk was going to attack me.
Well, I was told you. I mean, we're in the park. There's a lot of things out there. It's the first thing in the morning, and so Turner goes out the door and he starts screaming. And he's on one side of the car, and there's a mother elk on the other side of the car. And Turner goes one way, and the elk goes that way, and then he goes the other way, and the elk goes that way. So there's this car in between the two of them. I was like, "What is all that noise?" And I opened the back door. Like, why did you go out the back door? You were terrified. That elk.
I was 12, man. It was an 800-pound animal. Looked me down.
It was nerve wracking. But that's why you're so mad at him now. It all worked out.
Well, you were just over there. You were no help at all. You were just laughing at me.
Well, I mean, I shoot it away. Eventually. I knew if you stayed on your one side of the car, you were going to be fine.
Well, what happened was that I got in between the calf and the mama. And then her calf stayed behind me. And then eventually the calf went back to the mom. And there was this like Subaru behind, in between me and this elk that wanted to trample me. And I say I got attacked because, man, it happened. It happened to me. But there was another lady in Mammoth who got trampled by a cow elk.
They're no joke.
Yeah, man, it's no joke. And I was a little 12-year-old kid, terrified, in tears. And I look over there, and you, Mom, and Hayden and Hannah are just dying.
It was you. And the moral of the story is, listen to your dad. I told you we were going out the front door, and you went out the back door.
Well, I didn't know that the fear of death would be in my eyes if I didn't.
better a cow elk than a grizzly bear.
Yeah, true.
And it could happen anywhere in the park. But so anyway, that's super cool, and I'm glad to hear that you did that. And we have Brendan here too. I want to hear Brendan's story too, because Brendan has been doing as passionately as you've been going after the hunting. Brendan seems to be going after the fishing, and it's a slightly different story. But you guys went to high school together, kind of at different times. Like you planned to come to Montana State far sooner than Turner did, and Turner was a late decision maker. But what was your decision like to come out here rather than what everybody else was doing?
I've always been in love with the outdoors, and growing up, I was just like Turner. Dad, when can I go fishing? When can I go fishing? And I remember I started fishing when I was 2 years old and grew up fishing on a Finger Lake in upstate New York. Every summer we'd go up there, and I remember watching my dad's cast go up in the air, and I just thought that was the most beautiful thing ever. And I went to fly fishing camp when I was, I think, 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there double sessions, both sessions. And I loved it. Went 3 years in a row. And that's actually when I saw Mr. Rowland for the first time. I didn't even know Turner at the time. And he was casting football field length. And it just blew my mind. and I'd always thought, man, I want to do something different in my life. I want to do the thing that really makes me come alive. And I knew that I got this. I went out to Bozeman and visited my buddy's ranch, and we went to this pawn shop in Bozeman, and I got this velvet painting, black velvet with white paint, and it has these mountains and the northern lights and a cabin, and I had it above my bed, and I'd go to sleep every night. I was a senior in high school. I thought I'd stay in the South and go to Georgia, but I'd look up at that painting, and I'd say to myself, man, that's the dream right there. So,
just being there. And I knew that nothing was stopping me from making that a reality but myself. And so I decided to pull the trigger and make it happen. And at the time, no one else was going out there. I just knew it was something that I had to do. So when you're thinking about that, I mean, the Rocky Mountains are a big place, and there's Colorado, and there's even, Southern Rockies, Utah kind of area. And then you have 2 different schools in Montana. Like what drew you to Montana State?
So I toured both Montana and Montana State. And when I was 13, I came out to Yellowstone for a fishing trip with my dad. And I remember going out there, and I was like, gosh, like I was in the hotel looking up in Bozeman after we flew in. I was looking up at the mountains like, wow, like, is this even real?
Yeah.
And I was blown away. And just the access to fishing around here and skiing really, really drew me. And I just felt, it really came down, I felt at home in Bozeman.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
so also an interesting thing too is, like, I think that a lot of people, one of the reactions that I get when I tell people that you guys are out here is like, oh, are they going to school? But I mean, you're studying like real stuff. Like what is your major?
I'm studying computer science.
And with what, you have a different minor too?
I'm planning a minor in music right now, but kind of up in the air.
But the computer science that you're studying, I mean, we talked about it a little bit before. I mean, you're studying artificial intelligence and like all of these ways to create apps, and like the stuff that you're studying is like hard for me to even understand. But I mean, you're going after it. You're saying you're getting kicked out of the library at the
2 a.m. mark. Yeah, the janitor's come, he's sweeping. He's like, man, like, it's time to go. And I'm like, oh, go somewhere else.
So you're not done with your homework at 2 a.m.?
Yeah, sometimes, you got to crank her out till she's done. But yeah, it's kind of, I just put in this mindset where if I like to work hard, play hard, and, school comes first. I get that done, and then getting that done allows me to go to the river. But for me, studying computer science enables me this freedom to be able to work in any industry I want. And if I can help like as many people as I possibly can. And it's really fascinating for me to learn about all these technological changes that are happening in the world.
Yeah, I know. I was just talking to you, and you scared the crap out of me. Like the artificial intelligence just blows me away. It scares me, and then I hear somebody like Elon Musk say that it's the devil incarnate, and that is absolutely what we need to watch out for. And I'm thinking, man, I am not the smartest person even in this room, and artificial intelligence just scares me to death. Like, and we were even having some conversations of, what do you think, like with your knowledge of artificial intelligence, what do you think the reality is that of these movies where the machines take over and then destroy mankind? And you were kind of like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty possible. And then I'm like, oh man, I thought you were going to say it was just Hollywood. No, Brandon. So is it possible?
I mean, who's to say, but right now I think that's a really far away where they have that full control. But we're at a very like golden age where we're at that turning point of where we're giving all these machines the ability to teach themselves. And that's a very vital time. In that process, we need to really focus on the ethics of what we are coding these machines to do and how they think. And
so that's a pretty big statement that we need to look at the ethics of that. So when you're studying this in a college environment, in university setting, is that coming into the class at all?
I mean, we have had ethics class, but honestly, I think it should be focused on more. The power that these professors are teaching their students is pretty substantial, and it needs to be used for good, and it needs to be used to help people. A lot of people think like, oh, the artificial intelligence are going to take our jobs, but really, if you look over the timeline of history, Industrial Revolution, it may have taken out some jobs, but it also promotes and excels jobs that we can even imagine.
Right. I mean, as simple as 12 years ago, there wasn't such a thing as a social media manager. Like, I mean, and that's a very, very simple little example for what you're talking about. But there'll be entire industries that we don't even have a clue. I mean, we couldn't even possibly forecast out that there will be these entire industries. I mean, who would have forecasted that there would be an entire industry around Fortnite? Or, I mean, that's not even that long ago. And now, like, it's crazy. I mean, but I don't know. When we were having the conversation about could machines take over, and what really scared me about what you said is you're like, yeah, machines just, you build this machine to figure out what the problem is and how we can reduce traffic. And, well, the real problem is that there's too many people, so just reduce the number of people. And how do we do that? We just shut the grid down and everybody dies and there's no more traffic. And it's like, be careful the goal you set for these machines, because there's not like there's no moral compass to what they're doing. And it's like, they just have a goal that you've set for them, reduce traffic. And they're like, okay, well, the easiest way to do that is less people. How do we kill the people the fastest? So I don't know if that's reality or whatever, but that just kind of scared the crap
and
out of
that's
me.
a pretty extreme example, I think. But
It's how I do things, Brendan.
Yeah, I mean, it's real, and it's just people need to, when they're coding these things, they need to always keep in mind the consequences and the parameters that they are setting and the data sets they're using, because that all comes into play. And once it gets to that point where you're not really sure why the machine is doing something, that's when it gets into this gray area.
Wow. And then what do you do? Unplug it?
I mean, yeah.
I turn it off and turn it back on. That's how I fix everything. But what if it won't let you? Like, all of a sudden the power button doesn't work and it just keeps going. We had this movie when I was a kid, and it was called War Games. And it seems like this would be a perfect time to reboot this. So this is like the second movie this week that I've thought would be the perfect time to
talking
reboot
about a
it.
little Back to the Future
Yeah,
talk?
Back to the Future. Yeah. We're going to have The Rock's going to be Biff.
We still haven't figured out who Marty McFly is going to be.
Zac Efron.
Zac Efron?
Yeah, Zac Efron's going to be Marty McFly. He's going to have to lay off the weights a little bit, though, because Marty, I mean, he could probably take out Biff. But we've got The Rock as Biff. We've got Jack Black with his hair dyed gray as Doc.
And
we've
spiked up with some grease.
Yeah. We've got, the girlfriend. You had one. The New Zealand.
Natalie Rosser. Yeah,
okay.
That's Brendan's future chick right there.
I'll take your advice on that one. Anyway, so now that's the reboot. But we had this movie called War Games that was all about this machine that could simulate war, and then you would try to win, and it got out of control, and it just kept going and wouldn't stop, and so they had to stop it. Seems like that would be a perfect reboot. War Games. Anybody in Hollywood listening? I'll buy a ticket. And we got to have The Rock and Jack Black and somebody else is in there.
Bradley Cooper.
Oh yeah, everybody will buy a ticket for a Bradley Cooper movie, right? He's funny, usually. I don't know about The Star Is Born. So anyway, one of the things that you said that was super interesting is that you said that the more you study computers and computer science, the more you want to get away from them and value your time on the river Is that accurate, what I just said?
Yeah, that's totally accurate. So I remember walking down the hallway the other day at school, and I looked, and 75% of the kids were on their phones, and it just kind of wowed me. Like, there was no face-to-face communication going on. Everyone was just checking their social media, texting someone. And then I went upstairs, and I went and I texted someone. Then I realized, gosh, maybe I'm one of them. Every time I go out and I go fishing, and I'm just sitting there, the water's passing between my legs, and I just casting and don't have a worry in the world. And I just have such a deep connection to the nature. And I think where all these people in New York City, are these people in big cities that can't experience something as intimate as I'm experiencing right now. And I fear that people are going to constantly be disconnected from the primal instinct to get out in the nature and to really do what you love. And maybe that doesn't have to be nature, but for me it is. And I just feel a real connection to myself and to others, and to when I go fishing with others, I have such a great experience and stories to tell. And as I study these machines, and I sit there behind a computer for 8 hours in the day, and all I'm thinking is, dang, I really want to get out on the water. But I know what keeps driving me to keep getting behind this computer is to the knowledge that I can teach myself anything. If you're listening to this like podcast and thinking, man, I can't teach myself computer science, I can't give myself this freedom to be able to work from anywhere, to work on any project that I want, you definitely can. There's free resources out there online that you can learn, and you can teach yourself to really do anything that you want, and anything that you can set your mind to, you can do.
Well, that's cool, including fishing, right?
Yeah.
So,
definitely.
Well, I want to know if, since you can teach yourself to do anything, what has your learning curve been like getting out here and becoming like a fisherman on the rivers and tackling the drift boat? And has that been a super easy process?
Well, no. So I got my drift boat last fall, and I have a great story for y'all. So I first few days having the drift boat, took it down an easy river, and that wasn't too bad. But then I took it over down to Idaho, and went on this kind of boys fishing trip, overnight camping. Had 2 boats. It's going to be great. And we get to the boat ramp, and I'm putting it in, and I realize, dang, it's pretty windy out there. Like, it'll be good. It's Montana. It's always windy in Paradise. And so, I guess that was Idaho, but both equally pretty windy. And we get in the river, and we keep going down, and I am brand spanking new on the oars, on the sticks, and I'm kind of struggling a little bit, and the wind is howling. And to describe to you how strong this wind is, just to go downstream, I'd be having to row backwards down the river downstream, and to fish, it was incredibly hard. And if I wasn't rowing, our boat would be moving upstream. And it was upstream wind, probably 40 mile an hour. And it was ridiculous. It was crazy, and kept inching. It was like I was in a marathon. Like, I was just signed up for the crew team, and I was just rowing my heart out. I was breaking. I was sweating. It was cold, and I let one of my friends behind the oars, and we went through this pretty technical section, and there was this tree that was overhanging in the water, and it was really deep, and he ended up smacking against this tree, slamming up against it, and water just started pouring in the boat.
Oh my God.
And my life, like, literally, like, a little bit flashed before my eyes, and I was like, whoa, this is intense. And I decided to instinctively jump on the side of the boat, and bam, it popped right up. But there was gallons of water in the boat, and I was just wide-eyed, like, just didn't say anything. And then we parked the boat. I got the little squirt gun. I'm squirting it out, and I'm just thinking, wow, it's a crazy trip. And we still had 6 miles of the river to go, and the wind was still howling. We ended up catching some nice 22, 23-inch browns, which is pretty sweet. But man, and then so we start going down the river more. It starts getting dark, and we realize, wow, we don't know where this boat ramp is, and it's still windy. Still having to row downstream with my back facing the stream. And I'm literally having to look over my shoulder just to row.
And you're not letting any of your friends get behind the oars anymore?
No. It's pretty much me from there. And we end up getting probably 3 miles from the boat ramp on Google Maps. And luckily, we had some phone juice left, but I think one person had a headlamp, and then everyone's phone was about to die with we just had that phone light, and it starts to get pitch black, and we're prepared to huddle up like some penguins on the stream in Idaho on the bank. And we decided to keep on going, and finally we make it to the boat ramp, and it is midnight, and it is super dark, and get to the boat ramp, and we get there, and I don't know where the car is. Dude, where's my car? I don't know. And we searched 30 minutes around the boat ramp, finally find it. Thank God. And then the keys not there. It's all locked.
No.
Yep. So we end up having to hitchhike.
Did you think you might have lost them in the river?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was a deep concern. I searched the boat thoroughly, and they were not there. I was double checking the pockets, and ended up having to hitchhike by some friendly fellow campers.
That you had to wake up at midnight.
Yeah,
right.
just to get some help. But luckily, people were nice, and were able to help us out and get us to the shuttle car, which luckily had my keys in it, and we were able to finally get back to Bozeman at an early 4 a.m.
God, and this is day one with your new boat?
Yeah, day one.
Pretty much
day one, and gosh, that scarred me. So if you're a new rower out there and thinking, wow, maybe that, like, you had a scary experience like that, and you're thinking that it might hold you back, but don't let it, because
well, how quickly did you just jump back on the horse and ride?
It took me a couple months, honestly. Yeah, I was bucked straight off and got stomped a couple times, but I was able to get back on the sticks, and really just kind of take my time, and it really helped to get out with people that knew what they were doing.
It helped. That's funny. Because it seems like that's pretty much the case in every walk of life, that if you can actually go with somebody that knows what they're doing, you cut the learning curve and possible death curve. But I mean, these rivers around here are no joke, man. And then you have situations to where, hypothermia is real. And, if you go out there and you get wet and the wind's blowing, now it's dark, and you get yourself in a situation to where you're going to have to spend the night out there, and you just thought this was going to be, little 3-hour river trip, and bring your sunscreen, and nobody brings a jacket. I mean, the Rocky Mountains, basically, you guys have been out here plenty to know, but I mean, the first couple of weeks you're out here, maybe you don't realize that everywhere you go should be carrying water and a jacket, because the weather changes super fast. And if you're going to take a little day hike up one of these hills over here, that could turn out bad. I mean, you really need to be prepared around here, because when it changes fast, and the river can go even quicker, because you can get wet. And when you get wet and that wind's blowing, that is bad news, man, as you know. But you got wet yesterday, right?
Oh yeah. So I went fishing yesterday, and I woke up at 5:00 in the morning, went to some hot yoga. It was great. If you haven't done that, go do it. It's a great way to start off the day. And so after that, I was walking to hot yoga, and I noticed it was pretty warm. It was around 45 degrees.
And that's in late November, mid-November.
And I was like, the fish got to be moving. And so I'm doing the Warrior 2, and I'm like, wow, the fishing's going to be really good after this. And sure enough, I get to the river. I call my buddy, and he meets me, and we go. And I haven't even cast yet, and we're going up to this one hole, and we decide it's too fast to cross. So we go up to the next hole. I go in, and my buddy's fishing in the hole below. I'm going to the top hole. I'm going across the river, and as I'm going, I look down at the rapids, and I think to myself, man, it would be tragic to fall into these rapids.
And it's no longer 47 degrees, right?
No, it is a 35 degrees, like lightly sprinkling, about to snow. The weather forecast, it's supposed to change into snow in a couple hours. And before you know it, right as I had that thought, couple steps, I lose my footing on one step, trying to slam my feet down. And next thing you know, my head's under the water, and I'm floating down in the river like a bug. And I wasn't really panicking, but gosh, it sure did wake me up. And
water's cold.
Yeah, the
November,
water's it's a little chilly. And so I'm like swinging my arms, like trying to get to the shore, but the river keeps taking me, and I'm looking down at my buddy, and I see him, and he's fishing, and he's got the widest eyes, like, oh man. I'm about to be spit out right into his fishing hole. But then the river decides to give me grace, and I go out and get over in this eddy, and I get out on the shore, and, you know, I've seen some survival shows and think I need to start taking off these clothes. So I take off my jacket, wring it out, and I could fill half a bucket with how much water I had. I decide, you know what, I'm here, and I'm going to do some fishing. My buddy's like, oh, do you want to head home? And I'm like, I'm good. Let's get it.
So you didn't fill your waders up?
No. I had a wading belt, and that taught me I almost always have a wading belt, and now I will always have a wading belt, because you never know when you're going to fall, and be sure to have that thing tight, because nearly almost no water got under.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of different kinds of waders, and the ones that you were probably wearing are the more fly fishing style, where you have the stocking foot wader with the boots on the outside, and the boots have laces, and they're tight, and you walk a lot in these boots, so they're like a high top tennis shoe, or even a boot that is tight. So if you fill those waders up, it's not like you're kicking those out like a pair of boot foot waders that your foot just kind of slides into, and you fill those up, and you could pretty easily just kick your feet out of those and swim out of the waders. But this is a different deal altogether, because you have tied yourself into the waders. So without a wading belt, that's a bad situation. And I saw a guy go down like that when I was guiding, and he just thought he could walk across the river, and it got deeper and deeper, and then he kind of thought, well, I guess he was thinking, well, I'm already over this far, it's going to get shallower very soon, and he could walk across. It was just a little side channel, but I'm making lunch for the clients, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's going down. And sure enough, he went down, and he did not have a wading belt on, and he got tumbled in the current. And luckily I saw him and did what that my outfitter that taught me how to guide was like, you always keep your people upstream. So like if you're making lunch down here, you tell them to go upstream, not downstream. Because if they're downstream from you, they fall and they get swept down current. There's not a lot you can do. But this one, I watched him, and he was way upstream, and I had made a beeline for him, and like actually jumped off the bank and ran over there and swam some and picked him up. And he had the fear of God in his eyes. He thought he was down, because the waders are getting full of water, and they're pulling you down. So that wading belt, man, good move there. But you've always got some kind of story where you're getting wet or cold or something.
And then, so the end of that story is I ended up going up and fishing and caught a nice brown, which was just such a big relief. And I ended up catching a cutthroat in a stream that they're almost never catch.
I've heard
cutthroats.
a lot about that, the cutthroat in these different places that people haven't found them before. I don't know what that deal is.
I caught a cutthroat on the Madison a couple years ago, I think.
That's not a place that I know that they live. I mean, that seems like
Surprised
an oddity.
Me.
but you know, somebody probably does.
Yeah, I think they're doing a lot of restorations on the tributaries
Yeah.
that kind of go in the mountains, and I guess they kind of make their way down.
I'm always a fan of the cutthroat. I like the cutthroat. It's the Jack Crevalle of the trout. It is. I mean, they really like to bite things. They make a good day. I mean, that's all we had in the South Fork of the Snake River. It was mostly, I mean, it wasn't all that was in there. There were rainbows and browns too, but when I was guiding on the South Fork of the Snake River, it was 99.9% cutthroats, and they were all 17 and a half inches long because the slot was 17. And the slot was 18. So you could keep a fish over 18 inches. So all these fish were 17 and a half to 17 and 3/4 inches long. And once they got to 18, the Idaho boys liked to take a few home. And, but anyway, I love the cutthroat. They eat every kind of fly. So Brendan, what's your plans for now? What's ahead in your immediate future?
So next semester I am off to New Zealand.
And so is this a school type trip, or are you just going, or what? What's going on?
I'm studying abroad at the University of Otago in Dunedin.
Wow.
And it's going to be amazing.
Do they have computers there?
They do. I actually talked to a fishing guide over the phone for 45 minutes. Great guy. I believe his name's Casey. And he told me about the computer science program. Both of his sons are studying computer science, and gave me the details about the fishing in Dunedin compared to Christchurch, and that's kind of where the two places I was trying to decide between.
So there were multiple universities that you could choose from
in
this program? And this program is through Montana State?
It's actually through CIS abroad.
Okay.
And it was not on the list of the Montana State schools, but Montana State did accept it.
So is this the kind of deal, I remember looking into something like this before, and you pay Montana State tuition. You pay tuition to Montana State, and so whatever that tuition costs, then now you go on this program. Is that how it works?
So traditionally that is how it works, but through this program in particular, I pay them, and then my credits, I just have to get them approved, and they'll all transfer.
Do you get them approved before or after you take the classes?
Before you take the classes.
That's a good move.
Uh-huh.
What do you mean nothing transfers? Oh, well, I had a good time. So, do you have any idea what your schedule is going to be like?
So I'm planning to take kind of the minimum amount of classes, and I'm hoping to just be able to get out in the forest there as much as I can and explore New Zealand, and kind of just give myself free time to do all these things.
And so did this fishing guide that you talked to, did he seem to be encouraging that there's plenty of public water and plenty of opportunity for you to go and find places to fish? Because, I mean, I don't know anything about it other than my super rich clients take helicopters everywhere. So I'm just kind of wondering, as a student, what does that look like for you fishing down there?
Yeah, so he said there's a fly fishing club that he encouraged me to join, and he said there's a ton of streams and tributaries around the area. The city itself is right on the ocean, so there's a lot of feeder creeks and stuff that run in there from the mountains. And
do they have sea run fish?
I believe so, but
wow.
A lot of
I've never heard about that in New Zealand. That would be you get those giant brown trout that they have there anyway, and then they go to the ocean for 6 months and eat shrimp, and then they come back in there like a tank.
Yeah, I would imagine it's just like that.
The sea run browns. And then I'll never hear anybody talk about it in New Zealand. Maybe it's you can take a spay rod with you.
I don't have one right now, but man, that's something I could look into.
Yeah. God, that sounds like an amazing trip. So are there things that university specializes in, that like types of classes that you don't have an opportunity to take here? Or is this mostly, I'm going fishing?
It's a combination of both, I'd say. And I plan on taking a cultural class about the Kiwi and Maori culture there, which will be super interesting. And I also plan on taking a photography class, something I've also been pretty interested in, and what better place to explore that than there. So, and then I also plan to take a music class, which will be I
It
had
sounds
a lot
like
of fun.
that's not the bare minimum you could take. That sounds like at least 12 hours.
Yeah. I mean, in order to keep my scholarship at Montana State, I have to do that. So.
Wow. So, what kind of grades have you been getting in computer science classes? Has that proven to be very difficult? It sounds hard to me.
So, a lot of them are super hard. I've been able to maintain a good GPA, but I've kind of transitioned my mindset more recently to not care as much about the grade and care more about the knowledge I'm receiving. And that has been a tremendous turning point in my academic career because really it's just much more of a joyful experience. If you're focusing on, hey, what do I want to learn and what do I want to get out of this class rather than what grade do I need to make?
Right.
That really, just that mind shift and mindset really is just beneficial to the soul and just beneficial for your learning experience and is really...
When you make a shift like that, is the end result that you actually make better grades? Or, you know how like sometimes like they're talking about athletic performance and it's like you'll see a team play its very best when it's up by a lot of points and there's no pressure and they're fluid and loose and playing great, where you have when you have intense pressure, like they don't want to make a mistake. When you're up, you don't care if you make a mistake. I mean, you don't want to, but you're way more free. Like a wrestler that's up by a bunch of points, he's going to probably end up pinning the guy where he's not afraid to take a risk. And it sounds like maybe that could possibly be something that you're experiencing. Like when you decide I'm going to consciously shift over to learning more rather than playing this game of school and learning what I need to learn to make an A on the test rather than learning what I'm very interested in. Like it seems like almost, I don't know. I was kind of wondering if it ended up that maybe you're freer, looser, and you end up making better grades than you were doing before when you were afraid to take any risks.
Yeah, I'd say I am making a little bit better grades than I have before. And a story that goes along with what you're saying is I was working on this AI project with my partner, and we had to submit it at 11 or at midnight. We submitted at 11:30, and he looked at me in the library and he said, "Do you want to take the unstuck in time approach on this with me?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Have you ever read the book Slaughterhouse-Five?" And I hadn't. He said, "Well, why should learning stop at a deadline?" And that blew my mind.
Wow.
Just really, and it's so true. Why should it? And so we ended up working on this project that was already due. We had already submitted it, and we stayed in the library till 2 a.m., and we had the best time and I learned more from that experience. Like you said, no pressure, just being able to truly dive into what you want to learn and the knowledge you want to gain. And it was a tremendous experience for me.
Wow, that's super cool. And did you go back to your professor later and be like, yeah, that one we submitted at 11:30, well, it turns out it kind of sucked. And I'd really like to put this, because we've been working on this other thing all night, and it turns out everything we did was wrong.
So we ended up, the algorithm we were working on we didn't get to work by the end of the night, but my partner said he's done that a lot and submitted projects after the deadline, and almost 90% of the time, the teachers still take him because they're so thrilled because the student actually cares about the knowledge.
Well, I mean, that's like, the whole, it seems like that would be the greatest reward for a teacher. Like, wow, you guys sat in the library for another 6 hours after the deadline because you wanted to? Like, okay, these are my students. I mean, these are the guys that are going to take this knowledge and actually do something with it. I mean, I don't know. There has to be some kind of a line that they have to hold. Like there's a deadline and everybody else submitted it by then, but maybe there's some extra points or something that you could throw in there. But that has to be, if a teacher is like, well, my teaching has interested these guys enough that they're willing to put in all this extra work, that would have to be very rewarding, whether they could give you credit for it or not. Seems like that would be pretty cool. Well, man, that New Zealand trip sounds amazing. I'm wondering if you're going to come back. Turner, what do you think? You think he's coming back?
Oh, Probably not. You meet some Kiwi chick down there, man. Just stay.
Who knows?
Do you think if you meet that one that Turner showed me on Instagram, she was like Miss New Zealand?
Yeah, Miss New Zealand, Miss Australia, or something like that.
I don't think you're supposed to get Australian and New Zealand people confused.
They don't like each other?
I think it's like Alabama, Auburn. I don't know if they don't like each other. I just think that it's two countries that are like Canada and the United States. Like
I don't know.
You're
man.
like, you're from Minnesota, right? And he's like, no, I'm from Canada. Like, oh.
I don't know. I don't know, man. Australia and New Zealand both seem pretty cool, but New Zealand has trout. Australia's got some good fishing, man. You went down to around that Barrier Reef area and caught a few world records, didn't you?
I tell you, well, yeah, that's where I caught my first world record ever, queenfish.
It got pulled in by that groper.
Yeah, that's somewhere.
Where Hayden made
that's
that,
somewhere hidden deep
John
on the internet. You can find me getting pulled in by a Queensland groper, literally yanked in the water as I was hand feeding these things that look like Goliath grouper. They are. They're the Australian version of the Goliath grouper, and they're just as big. And I was feeding them these fish and I had a really good grip on the tail of this one. And this fish came out from under the bottom of the boat, and next thing I know, I was in the water. And it's on the internet. Somebody can find it, but it's pretty funny. Anyway, so I went to Australia, my one and only time to go to Australia, and pretty much landed Sydney, then flew to Cairns, and had a few days to spend in Cairns by myself. And pretty much almost immediately, I was kind of like, I could live here. This place is awesome. There's a few places in the world that I've gotten that type of feeling. Like, I don't know what it is about this area, but particularly Yellowstone National Park gives me this feeling of, I don't know. I don't even really know how to explain it. Like, I'm supposed to be there. Also like a feeling of peace, and also like a feeling of power. And I felt it also in Hawaii, and I felt it in Australia. And certainly when I go to the Keys, I feel it there. But I don't know. It's weird when you go to a place that you've never been before, and it almost feels like slipping on a pair of your most comfortable jeans. And you're just like, wow, this place is amazing. I mean, the people were awesome. What surprised me was that how similar that part of Australia was to Florida. And it's almost like Florida turned upside down. And so the further north you go, the closer to the equator you're getting. So the further north you go in Australia, the warmer it's getting, all the way to the peninsula, which is just like Florida and eventually the Florida Keys, that hangs off the north, and they call it the Carpentaria Peninsula. And then there's the Bay of Carpentaria, and that's where we fished up there. But from Cairns to there was kind of like driving from Orlando to the Keys, in the way that the vegetation changed, and then as you went further, you got closer to the mangroves, and then it's full on mangroves, and then basically you would see all of this vegetation there that was eerily similar to what we have in the Keys, but slightly different. And I also found that the Keys, that the fish we were fishing for there, it was the same kind of thing. It was like they had permit, but they were a little different. They had tarpon, but they weren't tarpon. They were this oxeye herring, and they didn't get as big, but they looked and acted just like tarpon. They didn't get as big. And then we had barramundi, which were incredibly like snook. And then there were like all these jack species, and then there was this queenfish, which looked exactly like our leather jacket, which you're very familiar with because it put three. Turner got poked by a leather jacket when he was.
I got smacked.
He was a very young boy, and it seems as it's very traumatic to him right now. But it did. They have these 3 dorsal fin spines, and I'll never forget this. like somebody, Hayden or somebody, pulls in this little yellow jack, which doesn't get more than a foot long in the keys, but it has these 3 nasty spines that stick forward like this. And when they're in
stressful
situations, they poke them out like this. So this thing comes flying over and hits Turner right in the leg. And, he was so young. I remember this so well. You were so young that there were literally, like as a parent, you knew every little boo-boo that you had ever had on your whole body. Like, and there were these 3 dots on his leg. And his body was like perfect. There were he had not been cut, not very many bug bites, not very many bruises, not very many skinned knees yet. I mean, he was really young, right? And you as a parent, you're just holding this perfect baby and you're changing the diaper and everything. And it's just perfect. And then it grows up to somebody that can walk around and still hasn't really fallen down and skinned the knee yet. And so I just remember these 3 dots that this thing left on you. For years they were there. And it was like, oh, there's where the leather jacket hit him right in the leg. So anyway, this leather jacket has a cousin in Australia that's called the queenfish. And you might get a chance I'm sure they have them in New Zealand too. They're very common, like Jack Crevalle. And that was the first world record that I ever caught, and also the first world record that Dottie Ballantyne ever caught, that went on to get over 100 world records. And it was this experience of this Australian fishing trip, which was it's just the most awesome place. And I bet that you're going to go to New Zealand and feel the same thing. Like, wow, I could live here. In fact, I'm going to.
That's cool, man. That queenfish is a cool fish. I got to catch one of those when we were over in Christmas
Island.
Yeah.
That was I didn't think.
Right after I broke off that big bonefish, man.
Yeah, that was something that I didn't know. I didn't know queenfish lived in Christmas Island because the first trip that I've been there twice, once with you and once on another trip, we didn't catch any other species but bonefish and trevally. The first time I went there. And then when we went there, we caught all kinds of stuff. The first time, yeah.
How many did you catch?
Well,
because we had a hard time catching a trevally, man.
Well, yeah. So there's catching a trevally, and then there's catching the one that you want to catch, which is like the 60-pounder that is just the giant trevally, the big. We had a couple of shots, and they're as black as that backpack over white sand, and there's giant, and I have never done that.
Hayden got one to eat, didn't he? I think he got one. I might be. It might have been someone else in that camp.
Yeah,
but I think someone got a real big one to eat and didn't catch it.
Yeah, and even on that trip, I caught some smaller ones. Some that are like small Jack Crevelles and horsehide jacks and stuff like that, and fine, nice, but it wasn't the one we were after. I saw way more the first time. But the first time that I went there, I got to fish with one of the most famous guides from Christmas Island that we didn't get a chance to meet or fish with this time, and his Moana. And Moana, that's his specialty, big GTs. And he has the first time that we went there, he had a boat, and very few of the guides, if any, I think he might have been the only one that had his own personal boat. And it was a small little, crazy looking little boat. It was made by Hobie, I remember that, and it had twin, like 10 horsepower motors on it. Twin motors. Yeah.
10 horsepower?
Yeah, twin 10s. And it was just, or maybe they could have been twin.
Around the flats on that, man.
It could have been twin 25s, but I mean, small motors, twins, and this little kind of molded boat that was Hobie. But I'll tell you what, man, he could take that thing into places that nobody else could go, and he was extremely successful at catching those fish. And it was really cool. We didn't have that same opportunity in Christmas Island this year, but we did have some amazing.
We did good. We got in that one flat that was ankle deep, and we looked over and hundreds of bonefish tailing.
Yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, well, the thing I'd like to go to Christmas Island again because I'm sure that there are countless other places in the world like this. I don't know where they are. This is the only place that I know in the world that you can literally walk 15 miles and stay in bonefish all day.
We did it.
We didn't walk 15, but we walked all day.
Double digits.
It was all day, and we started out in ankle deep water, and just basically walked as the tide came in. We just kind of walked on the, a little higher on the flat, and stayed in the same depth of water where we were with this wave of bonefish that was trying to get on the highest part of the flat.
Sounds like Christmas.
Oh my God, it was incredible. You could just walk this as far as you want. And there were the first time I ever went there, and I believe that it was there this time, but there was a map you could see where you could connect this big flat to this flat over here, and then you could walk over here, and then you could connect this flat to this flat, so the boat could drop you off here and go around, and you could actually walk the interior of this island if you knew what you were doing, and you could kind of stay in the shallower water. You could just walk it forever. And I don't know. I love fishing out of a boat, but there is nothing like the feeling of just getting out there with a backpack and just walking.
Man, it's similar to hunting.
Yeah.
It's so similar to hunting. It's so similar to I mean, probably mule deer hunting, because you're just looking at them and you're just walking along waiting to see one. And then you finally see it, and you got to be careful about how loud you are. You got to be careful about your profile. You got to make a good cast. It's the closest thing to hunting that I've done.
Yeah, I know. And I think there's a big draw. There's a big draw to flats fishing from hunters. I mean, I see a lot of people that I fish with are avid hunters, and there is the same feelings get stirred up, like, I hope he doesn't see me.
Yeah.
I can't move. And then there is certainly, just like archery hunting or whatever, you are in this position of being full draw, and you're going to pull that trigger, and that's going to be it. And you're making that cast, and you're going to let it go. You're going to let it fly, and it is going to land hopefully in front of the fish, not on them. And if it does, maybe there's 100 of them there sometimes, and it's this giant explosion, and it literally a giant explosion. When you scare the one, you scare them all. And the same kind of thing. It's like, is now the time to let it go? Is now the time to let it go? Just even when you're shooting targets with archery, it's like, okay, is everything lined up? Am I doing everything like, in a Zen type way that it's exactly like the last time I shot, so that this one is going exactly where I want it to go? Or, is my draw hand, not in exactly the right place, or am I uncomfortable, or have I been holding this too long, or, what is it? And I get that same feeling from a fly cast, and then, at the time of, is this one the time to let it go? And then maybe now they come, you don't let it go, and now they come a little too close, and now you've messed it all up. But I mean, I love that situation.
I talked to this girl, Taylor Short, who worked at a fishing lodge in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And she was giving me some great advice, and she was explaining the difference between fishing in Montana and Idaho and the western United States to New Zealand. And she said it's completely different ball game out there. You're mostly sight fishing, almost 95% of the time you're sight fishing, and you're probably not going to catch one if you don't see one. And so you're hiking along these beautiful, in this jungly region with this pristine colored water, and you're searching for these fish. And once you finally see one, you better get ready, because it's about to be on. Your heart starts pumping, and you have to sneak up to them, hope you're wearing some type of camouflage clothing. And she said, even if you knock a pebble in the water, they're gone. If you line them, they're gone.
I can imagine, man. Those things, it's been explained to me very similar like that on the long days when we're not catching anything on the flats. And my people that go to Argentina or go to New Zealand, they tell me about their trip because there's nothing else to do because they're not catching any fish. But it has been explained to me like that you go until you find a fish, and then you fish for it. But that's my favorite type of trout fishing. I mean, you drift in a hopper down the bank, while you're in a drift boat. It's pretty nice and everything. But my favorite place ever to fish is is Flat Creek in the National Elk Refuge right outside of Jackson. And that's what you do there. I mean, you're going to have almost no success just standing up, walking down through there, throwing flies out into that river. But if you watch this long 200-yard stretch and you don't, it's not immediate. You might watch it for 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden you see this head come out from under the bank and then go back in. And then you sneak up there on your hands and knees and then set up for what you think is going to be the best cast, and then just start working through the flies in your box. And then sometimes you go through basically every fly in your box and come back to the first one. I mean, that's my favorite kind of fishing. It wasn't Hayden's favorite kind of fishing.
Hey. That poor kid.
Well, I think he would have liked it then, but I took Hayden to the south to the Flat Creek, and
on the worst day.
No, I mean it depends on how you look at it. I thought it was the best day.
Well, I don't think he really grasped what was going on. All he knew is that he was cold and wet, and I don't think he was catching any fish.
No. We hadn't even started trying to catch fish yet. We were still looking for them, and then a giant hailstorm came through. Right, a summer Wyoming hailstorm where it starts to rain, and then you're like, "Ow, wow, what was that?" And then here comes, "Oh, shit!" And then it's like golf balls flying out of the well, not quite golf balls, more like marbles.
Mm-hmm.
And man, they were just pelting the crap out of us. And I think I had a cowboy hat on, which was it was like a hard hat compared to Hayden, who had like a baseball cap on, and he didn't like it.
Man, I got caught.
He would like it now, but he didn't like it then.
I got caught 6 times this summer in fishing while it was hailing, and I caught a few while it was hailing. It was
Really?
Yeah.
That's a good way to break a rod, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going fast through there, and the marbles are falling from the sky.
Oh, I was huddling up in some trees.
Yeah, it's crazy, though, in the summertime when you look down at the bottom of your boat and it's all full of ice. Mm-hmm. That's when you know it's been a good one.
Those are some big dipping dots.
Yeah, that's what it's like. But I don't know, man. I got to say, boys, you guys, very proud of both of you. I mean, you really have bucked the trend. You did something completely different. And, it's just, as a parent, and I'm not your parent, Brendan, but you've been hanging around my house, since 8th grade or something. I don't know, man, just to see you guys doing what you want to do and doing something that really, really makes you happy. And not only that, but excelling at it, and then working super hard in school or working super hard at your work as an elk guide. Like, that's incredibly rewarding. It is incredibly rewarding, and just, I mean, really, I don't know how anybody could ask for anything more. I mean, you're offering a positive contribution to society. You're not a burden. You're doing exactly what you want. You're super positive. You're smiling all the time. I mean, that is, I don't know how anybody could ask for anything more. And it is really nice to see that this is not the end. Like, now you're jumping off to New Zealand and going for more adventures, and you're signing up for more elk hunting and all kinds of other things. And you were telling me all of the stuff you want to hunt. I mean, I just think it's, I just think it's so awesome. And congratulations to you both for making it happen, because, there's there's a big difference between just sitting around wishing and looking at that painting over your bed, thinking that's the life. And there's really a big difference between doing that and then really deciding, you know what? I don't really care if anybody else is going. That's what I want to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And, right or wrong, I might not like it, but I'm doing it, and chances are, if you feel that strongly about something, you probably are going to like it a lot. But it's really cool, man, to see you guys and to see this friendship that you have too continue, because, it's been told to me before that if you can go through life with one friend that you've had for, most of your life, you're really, really, really lucky. And you're on that path. I mean, you guys have been friends for a long time, and you got so many more adventures to go, but it's just cool to see it, man. Kudos.
That's cool, man. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Man, there are a lot of times where you kind of just look around being like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
You're welcome to my life.
You're out in the middle. I took my first client. I got lost. Horribly, terribly lost. And I was kind of looking around being like, man, should I be out here?
Well, I was going to find that quote that...
was that the one you posted on your Instagram about the corner?
No, I don't think I posted this one, but it's one of my favorite quotes. And you're talking about being out there and not knowing what you're doing. But you know what?
I have a good quote along those lines.
What is it?
Worry is just the misuse of imagination.
That one's good.
I like that. I don't know, man. I've been in a lot of situations where I've been really worried, and then I don't know if it's a misuse of my imagination.
Sometimes it's good to be worried, like if you're out in the woods and
you get lost.
You
start seeing bear tracks, and you're like, oh man.
But a lot of the things you worry about never happen. So
yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right.
Well, so we'll end this with this because this is one of my favorites. It's one of the best ever, and it has a lot to do with what we're talking about. You're out there, you're doing it. You may be making mistakes. You may not know exactly what you're doing, but you're actually out there doing it. And it's President Theodore Roosevelt. It's not the critic who counts, nor the man who points out how the strong man stumbled, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's one of the greatest quotes of all time, I think.
It is.
And
that's
really,
the man in the arena.
The man in the arena. Yep. And you boys are in the arena. You're doing it. And, proud of you both. So we'll end it there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing it. All right, boys. Until next week. Oh, well, tell us how do people find you?
I have no social media.
All right.
It's off the grid, man.
Off the grid. So if you want to email me at bas9829@gmail.com.
That sounds computer generated. And then what if people want to follow you?
Oh, I got Instagram. I think it's Turner Rowland 1. I think Sage Peak Outfitters. If you want to book an elk hunt, we're pretty booked for the next few years, but we can work something out. We're just hunting together. But, okay.
And I worked at the tackle shop on the Madison River in Montana last summer, and could be there maybe next summer, or if I don't stay in New Zealand. So
drop in and say hi.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you in Ennis. Man, thanks to our friends at Waypoint TV for all the support of the podcast. Go to waypointtv.com. Check it out. Send us some emails. Let me know what you're thinking about the show. Let me know what guests you want to see. If you got any other comments, questions, concerns, or you just want to strike up a conversation, send me an email, podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. If you got time, leave a review on iTunes. And until next week, man, we'll see you on the water.